I mean, Sean Hannity is Lindsey Graham by a different name. It's amazing to me to watch them cheerlead this. I mean, we've got 7 US personnel dead. They know exactly what President Trump wants to see and the messaging he wants to hear, and it is as bellicose and war hungry as you could possibly imagine.
Welcome back, folks, and buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into a political hot potato. The left is up in arms, claiming that even some on the right are finally seeing the light about war-hungry Republicans. They're hailing figures like Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson as truth-tellers for daring to criticize what they call the GOP's neocon tendencies. But let's be real. Is this a genuine conservative awakening or just another convenient narrative tale being pushed? We're going to break down this clip, dissect the arguments, and see if they're really calling the Enlightenment is actually just a different shade of the same old flawed thinking. Stick around because this is going to get spicy. Let's roll the tape.
I don't know about you all, but I personally am enjoying being a viewer of Megyn Kelly's, a bit of a renaissance, I guess, a little bit of an enlightenment that she's going through because she has taken some jabs at her former colleagues over at Fox. She's taking jabs at the warmongers within the Republican Party, and she herself is still very much on the right. And I'm here for it. I'm here to watch it. I love it because it needs to be said. And I think that Tucker Carlson has given other conservatives permission to see US foreign policy for what it really is. Now, Megyn Kelly decided to shred Sean Hannity. You got a little taste of that. Lindsey Graham and President Donald Trump for dragging the United States into a Middle East war on behalf of a foreign country. So here's more of Kelly.
Whoa, hold on a minute. Tucker Carlson has given other conservatives permission to see U.S. foreign policy for what it really is? And Megyn Kelly is shredding Sean Hannity for being war hungry? This is fascinating stuff, folks. Suddenly, conservative is synonymous with anti-interventionist in some circles. Look, I get it. Nobody wants war. But to frame any defense spending or strategic intervention as war hungry is a gross oversimplification. It's like saying a fireman is fire hungry because he keeps his equipment ready. Sometimes a strong defense is the best deterrent, and sometimes intervention is a necessary evil to protect our interests and allies. Are we truly conservative if we completely disengage and leave a vacuum for our enemies to fill? I don't think so. There's a difference between recklessness, adventurism, and strategic strength. We need to understand the difference, folks.
It is an isolationist or non-interventionalist worst nightmare. It is exactly the opposite of what President Trump ran on. Exactly the opposite. And yet Fox News is salivating over the prospect of more war, an extended conflict, and Lindsey Graham is its spokesperson. And President Trump seems to be enjoying that because if he weren't, we wouldn't be seeing that anymore.
You do be seeing Lindsey Graham on Fox News quite a bit these days. Like, I feel like he makes multiple Fox News appearances per day. He's like sweaty. He seems a little bit manic, like super excited, like salivating over the thought of like bombs dropping on the heads of civilians in these Middle Eastern countries, like totally depraved lunatic. And it feels good that for once, you're hearing people who aren't on the left call it what it is, okay? These people are warmongers, and Trump did renege on pretty much everything he campaigned on in 2024.
Okay, totally depraved lunatic for Lindsey Graham and salivating over the thought of bombs dropping on civilians? That's some serious hyperbole. Folks, wow. It's almost as if the speaker believes anyone advocating for a strong stance against hostile regimes is a cartoon villain twirling their mustache. Let's be clear, folks. No one in their right mind wants civilian casualties. No one. But when you're dealing with countries like Iran, who openly chant death to America and fund terrorist proxies, a strong response isn't about salivating. It's about protecting our interests and deterring aggression. Sometimes a firm hand is required, and that's not depraved. Is strategic. To paint every Republican who understands this as a bloodthirsty warmonger is disingenuous and frankly, it's a flat out cheap shot.
So, over the past few days, we've shown you numerous clips of Trump and Lindsey Graham. And rather than watch even more of them, why don't we take a look at what Sean Hannity's broadcast looked like last night?
A little advice to anyone still alive in Iran's Navy. Dock your vessel, head to dry land, and maybe you want to go home and join your families. Earlier, President Trump told our own Trey Yingst that Iran's leaders are desperate to negotiate. But before this beatdown, this latest beatdown, Iran was not even interested in giving an inch on their quest, their desire, their ambition for nuclear weapons. Remember, repeatedly, the president said over and over and over he would much prefer a deal. You know, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists out there. I've known the president for 30 years, Steve. He's a man of his own mind. If he makes up his mind, it's his mind. People suggesting, oh, he was doing Israel's bidding. And I asked Bibi. Bibi actually laughed when I asked him. Or Israel's bidding.
You know what I got out of that video? That I need to be a lot more kind and empathetic to ordinary people, normies, who regurgitate the bile and lies you just heard from Hannity, because people are being intentionally misled and it makes me really angry. But rather than get frustrated with normal people, which I do time to time, and I need to stop doing that, we need to direct our ire to the propagandists who are lying to the American people. Iran did not have nuclear weapons, number one. Literally days before the war started, the mediator from Oman, who was part of, the negotiations over Iran's enrichment of uranium, went on one of those, Sunday shows and told them, here is what the Iranians are willing to do. They're willing to go much further than they did for the JCPOA. They are willing to stop enriching uranium, period. And here you have Sean Hannity lying to his audience and making it seem as though the Iranians didn't want to negotiate. So that's why Trump decided to attack. No. Trump pretended like the administration was interested in negotiating and then struck Iran, not just once last summer in the 12-day war, but twice in this now ongoing war in Iran.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So Hannity is lying to his audience by suggesting Iran wasn't interested in negotiating and that Trump pretended to negotiate before attacking? What? This narrative is a little too neat, isn't it? Folks, come on, really. It conveniently sweeps away years of Iran's insurgents and their history of bad faith dealings. Let's not forget, Iran has a long track record of using negotiations as a stalling tactic while secretly pursuing their nuclear ambitions. To suggest they were on the cusp of a groundbreaking deal and Trump just attacked out of nowhere completely ignores the complex decade-long dance of democracy and deterrence. Sometimes a show of force is the only thing that gets the attention of the hostile regimes. It's not about lying. It's not about telling a fib here or there. Sometimes it's about seeing the bigger, more dangerous picture and acting decisively.
They just flip it on its head. So in other words, the Fox News audience loathes Iran and thinks that, like, oh my God, we need to stop Iran immediately. When in reality, everything they're hearing, every accusation they're hearing about Iran, Israel's carrying out. The US is carrying out. Just the most dishonest scumbags imaginable over at Fox News. Disgusting. And I'm very happy to see their former colleague, Megyn Kelly, call them out. Now, even when you leave cable news, though, you will find some defenders of the Iran war. I think about the, trigonometry podcast. Like, they love it. They can't get enough of it. I mean, they're in the UK. Like, are you guys dragging your soldiers into a war on behalf of Israel? But anyway, so let's actually go to Ben Shapiro. He's one of the people who's not necessarily on cable news. He's doing his own thing with his podcast, which is losing viewership rapidly. But let's watch his response to Joe Rogan, who said that Trump betrayed his base by starting a war in the Middle East.
Joe is a skeptic of intervention. It's fair enough. But his arguments are not convincing. Joe keeps insisting that this is an endless war. Now, that's wild because we are less than 2 weeks into the war, and it's not going to last probably more than another 2 weeks. When Michael Schellenberger pointed this out on his show, Joe then responded that all wars are endless, which, I mean, they're not. By the way, Joe happens to be wrong on the numbers in terms of people feeling betrayed who are in MAGA. MAGA remains behind President Trump foursquare. According to a brand new YouGov Economist poll, 91% of MAGA supporters approve of the way Trump is handling Iran. 83% of Republicans overall approve. No one is feeling betrayed unless they fundamentally misunderstood President Trump's foreign policy from the get-go.
Right, Ben, but as we all know, you're not going to get regime change in Iran by fighting a war through the air. So the airstrikes are not going to topple the regime. You would need boots on the ground. And so how do Republican voters feel? How does Trump's base feel about boots on the ground? Because the same polling that he's citing indicates that the vast majority of Americans, and that includes Republicans, don't want to see boots on the ground. Israel's objective is regime change, and they say that they won't stop until they get regime change. So that could lead to a forever war, couldn't it?
Now, this is where we need to pump the brakes, folks. The speaker is dismissing Ben Shapiro's polling data about MAGA support for Trump's Iran policy by saying you're not going to get regime change in Iran by fighting a war through the air, and that Americans don't want to see boots on the ground. First off, military objectives aren't always about regime change with boots on the ground. Sometimes it's about deterrent, degrading capabilities, or protecting allies. Secondly, public opinion on troops deployment can shift drastically and dramatically when the stakes are clear and our national security is directly threatened. To suggest that a poll on boots on the ground automatically invalidates support for targeted strikes is a false equivalency. Voters support strong action, period, even if they don't want a full-scale invasion. Of course, it's about smart power, not just all or nothing.
But even more importantly, Iran is no longer interested in peace negotiations because they have tried to engage in peace negotiations on multiple occasions and they got sucker punched by the United States on 2 occasions. So now they're ready to punish the US and Israel. So there's no benefit to the United States by fighting this war. Israel will probably win no matter what. I mean, look, if they fail in toppling the regime, then they're actually going to be worse off because I'm sure Iran will now race toward a nuclear weapon. I mean, why wouldn't you? You need a deterrent when you have a belligerent country and its belligerent ally attacking constantly. How is that going to put Israel in a better place? It's not. You now have Ali Khamenei's son, who's a hardliner, as the Grand Ayatollah or the supreme leader in Iran. It's just a mess. It's a mess. So we've already lost 7 soldiers. Even if this doesn't end up being a forever war, why did we lose 7 soldiers to fight a war on behalf of a foreign country, Ben? We're spending $1 to $2 billion a year on this. I'm sorry, a day, not a year. $1 to $2 billion a day on this war against Iran, Ben. But do the Trump voters, the individuals who make up his base, who say that they're pleased with what Trump is doing, do they know all these details? Or are these details that are being withheld from them by people like you and Sean Hannity and other anchors over at Fox News? I think we know what the answer to that is. Shapiro, by the way, was responding to remarks that Rogan made on his podcast this week. And Rogan ended up doubling down. Here is the clip.
The problem is from the outside, like the rest of the world, you look at this unnecessary aggression by the United States government, and then you tack on whatever propaganda they have already been spitting out about America for the last 20 or 30 years. And then this war with Iran gets really ugly, because that's how you start a World War III. You start a World War III by doing something that, other than people that wanted this forever, Who else thinks that's a good idea? Who else thinks it's a good idea to just attack a country that isn't doing anything? They haven't done anything. Like, if you've proof that they've developed the depleted uranium and they've got it up to a point where they've got it to what percentage does it have to be?
90%. Iran had enriched uranium to 60%. I believe that they wanted a latent deterrent. Unfortunately, it didn't serve as a deterrent, and the U.S. Attacked anyway. You know what the U.S. isn't attacking? North Korea, Pakistan, other nuclear-armed countries. You know which countries did end up getting attacked? The countries that gave up their nuclear weapons: Ukraine, Libya. So you have to take a step back and think of these states as rational actors. They act based on incentives and disincentives. So in the case of Iran, I am sure that they are seeing the lack of a nuclear arsenal as basically what made them vulnerable to the attacks by the United States. The US wouldn't have attacked otherwise. And I should note, for all of the whining and crying you hear from the Israeli government about how Iran is such a big threat to them, we're talking about a nuclear-armed country. Israel is. They don't acknowledge their nukes. They're not part of the non-proliferation treaty when every other nuclear power happens to be. So do I actually believe that Israel sees Iran as a genuine threat? I don't. I don't believe them at all. But Israel does fund proxy groups like Hezbollah, which was established and Iran started funding in the 1980s after Israel tried to annex land in Lebanon. So Hezbollah was established to prevent that from happening, prevent Israel from stealing land from Lebanon. So Israel engages in actions that leads to the formation of militias and various groups that they don't like, but they'll never take ownership of their failed policies. They'll never take ownership of how their whole agenda of expanding their borders and annexing land makes them a target. Because let me tell you something, I have no doubt that if Mexico or Canada decided, you know what, we want to expand, we're going to go ahead and encroach into US territory, we'd go to war. We would. And right now, the Lebanese government, which by the way, your country is getting pummeled right now. And I get the anger toward Hezbollah, but really Hezbollah is the only group that's trying to protect Lebanon from the Israelis encroaching and stealing more land. It breaks my heart to see what's happening in Beirut right now. So that's what Israel wants to do. They want to get rid of the challenge that they face as they try to expand, and Iran prevents them from doing it. So that's not to say I agree with the system of government in Iran, and I want the people of Iran to live in the type of society where they get to decide who their leaders are. But honestly, at the end of the day, what happens with their business and their government is their business. It's not my business. It's not your business. It's not the United States government's business. And it sure as hell ain't Israel's business.
And there you have it, folks. We've just navigated a minefield of selective outrage and convenient narratives. What we heard today wasn't a conservative awakening so much as a repackaging of anti-interventionist talking points, often devoid of the nuanced understanding required for complete and complex geopolitical issues. It's easy to call people war hungry from the sidelines, but real leadership often requires tough decisions and a willingness to protect our interests, even when it's unpopular. Don't fall for the oversimplification. True conservative foreign policy is about peace through strength, protecting our allies, and confronting threats head on, not retreating from the world stage. So tell me, what do you think? Are these commentators truly enlightened, or are they missing the bigger picture? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more straight talk on the issues that really matter. And as always, stay vigilant, patriots. Stay vigilant.